Okay, so now we are moving from our animation. We're going to go to our flow graph. Now you'll notice I'm working from my week 7 state machines one. If you haven't done the state machines element, it's really, I recommend it just because of the fact that you can just turn stuff on and turn stuff off as you need to. And it just manages much better. It's so nice and pretty and organized. So definitely something to consider. But anyway, if you haven't done that yet, but you want to do this tutorial, when we click on any one of these, as we click into it, you'll notice it'll look very similar. So this is my directional player movement one, and that's what we'll be concentrating on because that's why it's green, and then we're going to use the projectile attack. Okay, so let's go in here. What I need to do first is I need to have a way, because we created that is moving variable, and what we want to do is basically determine the player is moving. So what I'm going to do in order to manage that is I'm going to go into my graph variables for this particular one, and I'm just going to create 2 variables. I'm going to call it, why don't we call it player move horiz, okay? And that'll be a float, and I'll call it player move vert. And that will also be a float. So I'm going to store a value for each one of these axes, and then I'm going to use that value to check to see if it's basically anything other than 0. Because if it's 0, the player's not moving. If it's any axis button other than 0, then it's moving. So what I'm going to do is just quickly grab this. As I said, this is my logic for figuring it out and grafting it onto an existing thing. Should you come up with a better solution, let me know. It may be more elegant than this. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these and I'm going to hold down Alt, drag them in, because we're going to be setting these variables. Grab that one and drop it there. Okay, and what we're going to do is basically set these variables. So I'm just going to unplug these so we can connect them. So it's going to go ding, 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 and then this is going to go down here, ding. Okay, the next thing I need to do is get that value and pass it into the variable. Now we can string them together, so I can pass it in here, and then I can also send it out and plug it in here. So that's nice. So same thing goes, you can plug it in here, and then I can plug it in here. So it's capturing it, saving it, and then it's still taking that value and passing it on, which is quite nice. So we are now gathering a variable, and I can't remember if you remember, but basically when you're doing with axis, it's a number between -1 and 1. So it's basically we're just looking for anything that's not 0, 0 being the dead point. Okay. So what I'm going to do is my second part, I'm going to create a separate little check down here, and this one is going to be an update, and so we're going to take those variables and we're going to use them. So this becomes kind of, I want to say, a little elaborate for what it looks like. I'd love if it was a simpler one. So what I'm going to do is basically use a branch, right? Our traditional way of saying, is it true or isn't it true? But now we need to compare what we're checking. So I'm going to use, oops, not note, but not equal. And that way I can just kind of, it allows me to create, it doesn't matter what it is as long as I'm comparing 2 things that are similar. So I'm going to create a float literal that's 0. So all this cares about is that it's not 0. If it's negative, it's okay. If it's positive, it's okay. It just can't be 0. All right, which is basically no movement. So this is my first check. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hold Control and click, 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 copy them all, hit Control D, and I'm going to duplicate this and sort of rearrange it a little bit to line things up a little bit better. But basically, I'm going to send the false to this one, and we're going to check the other. Okay, and so now we're doing basically the first check is on the horizontal, is this number 0? And then we're going to check on the vertical if this is this number 0. And so now that we have this set up, what we're going to do is we're going to send that variable, which we haven't done before. So animator set bool. Okay, and that bool is that bool in the animator window, which we called is moving. So I'm just going to is moving. Make sure you spell it correctly, or of course it won't work. We're going to connect true, either of these trues to that, to run that. And we're going to check the box. So we're saying if the value is other than 0, then yes, the player is moving. So tell it that that Boolean that the player is moving. I'm going to duplicate this Boolean now to compensate for the other situation, which is if it's 0 or 0, then basically the player isn't moving. So we're going to send that bool, and that will change that bool in Animator right here. It will change this variable that's called isMoving, and it will turn it on or off basically, and then help us manage this. So we've got that set up. Let's give it a try and see what we got. So our character should just idle. There we are. I push any direction, they start running. There we go. So we've got our elements. So the nice part for you guys is this is kind of the process for what you'll do for your finals. When you bring in your characters with your animations attached, is you'll want to duplicate those animations and then and basically load them into your animator controller, and then just, you know, you can get right into Bolt and control things. So the next step here, now that we've got this working, we've got our we've got jog and idle working. We still aren't using fire gun yet. So what we're going to do is we are going to set up that second piece of functionality. Okay, so let's get to it.